Welcome to the SportsWagers.ca podcast with Brian Sherwood Steinberg and Matthew Finney.
Welcome to the SportsWagers.ca podcast. I am the man behind the board, Matthew Finney, joined this week and every week, of course, by Brian Sherwood Steinberg, all those great daily write-ups over at SportsWagers.ca. Good day, Brian. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Matt. You know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is going to be busy. And I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming main event. You know, I'm getting a few emails and Twitter messages asking about my bracket and who I like to, you know, to go all the way or make a deep run, whatever. And I just want to say, you know, I'm not that. I mean, I'm going to put in a bracket here and there, but I'm not that guy, right? I'm not that guy that predicts, you know, upsets, winners here and there. Like, I do know the NCAA. You know, I'm probably more familiar than most, and so are you, Matt. You know, we're in the business of looking for value. And, you know, in the postseason, when you get these tighter games or closely monitored and analyzed and broken down 100 ways games, the lines are tighter, right? You will find value in the earlier rounds more than the later rounds because there's a lot of unknown teams in the round of 64. So, you know, that's what we like. I mean, you know, there are some Cinderellas I like. You know, I think San Diego State can make a deep run, or Providence can make a deep run. But you have to understand that, what is it, like maybe 3 out of the last 20 years, only 3 teams that have been seeded number 10 or higher have made it to the Final Four. So, you know, the seeding is pretty accurate for the most part. Yeah, there's teams that got snubbed and stuff like that, but, you know, a number 1 team is probably 1 or 2 number 1 teams are probably going to make it to the Final Four, right? But I don't really care about that. The only thing I care about is whether they cover the number or not. So I break it down day by day. We break it down day by day. And on Saturday, like, you know, the first 2 days are Thursday, Friday. On Saturday, there's going to be overreactions to Thursday's results. And on Sunday, there's going to be overreactions to Friday results. And that's what I base my plays on. You know, so filling out a bracket and trying to beat, you know, your friends or a group or whatever is a lot of fun. But really, that's not my focus. But I will, you know, do my best, obviously, to assist anyone. And I will post my bracket online. I'll make a couple of brackets and I'll post them up online, and we'll leave it at that. I'm not going to, you know, last year we did a complete preview of the brackets, you know, breaking them down, round 1, round 2, round 3. It's just too difficult to do that. You know, anyone can do that. You can find that a million places. So again, we're just looking at it day by day and where the value is and where we can make some money, where we can find a house or a market inefficiency and try and take advantage of that. And we'll have our plays posted every single day in that regard, Matt.
Oh yeah, for example, you got like Penn playing Kansas. I mean, we're not picking an upset there. We're not looking for a money line play. If we're going to play that game, it's going to be if there's value in a team like Penn taking back inflated points. And maybe Penn does upset Kansas. And in the next round, if they play a Seton Hall or an NC State and they're taking back maybe less points than they should, and there's some value in that favorite, then that's how we play this tournament, game by game, round by round, like Brian said, over and under reactions. And I mean, yeah, you got your Cinderella stories. You can maybe pick a team to go to the Final Four today, but we're into the day-to-day grind of it, and we're trying to make money on this thing, Brian, more than anything. That's really the most important thing. Entertainment value is great, but we're here to make money in-game, out-of-game, and that's what we're here to do.
You know, I much prefer the regular season in every sport. Like, I know from a fan standpoint, you love the playoffs. That's the best time of the year for fans. It's playoffs. That's what you play the whole season for, is playoffs. As a bettor that doesn't give a fuck about any team, I couldn't care less about the playoffs. I wish there wasn't playoffs. I like the regular season because you get, you know, you get great situational plays. You get, you know, there's just less focus on it, and you get better numbers, right? The playoffs become a little tighter. So, even with the NFL, like I love the NHL playoffs. I'm a big fan of the NHL, but I'm not a big, like I love the entertainment. I can sit and watch it for hours, but I prefer betting the regular season than I do the playoffs. That goes for NCAA basketball. It goes for every single sport. I couldn't care less who wins and who loses. I could not care less. I hate every fucking team, until I bet them. So, I'm sorry to say I hate your team. I hate the team you're a fan of. I don't care about them, but on the night I bet them, I love them.
Well, that's how it works, Brian. If if there's no money involved, if there's no, what would we do with our time? I don't know. but thank goodness.
Get so invested.
I know.
Like they get so invested, emotionally invested in their team. You'll hear people talk about their team and refer to them as we. We had a bad game. We had, like as they're part of the team. And people, I understand that. You get so heavily emotionally involved. If you're emotionally involved in a team, you should never bet them. Never. Because I've never seen a fan that thought their team was worse than it was. Most fans think their team is better than it actually is. And people get, if you ever watch the movie A Bronx Tale, which is a great movie, a great, great, great movie. If you haven't seen that movie, watch it. It's kind of a not really a gangster movie. It's about this kid growing up in Brooklyn, and his dad is a really, kind of straightforward guy. It's played by Robert De Niro. He's really a very straightforward guy, but they're living in this area where there's, kind of gangsters, right? And they're always gambling and making money. And the kid witnesses a shooting at the very beginning from one of the bosses, like this guy that everybody is fearful of. And he witnesses a shooting, and the shooting was done by the boss. And when the cops came to talk to the kid, he didn't rat out the boss, and the boss called it. Like the kid was 7 or 8 years old, and the boss called him in to his office, and he thanked him and whatever. And they were talking, and he said, like this kid, like he used to watch, what was going on, like next door. They hung out in this like cafe sort of, and they had all this money, and he used to watch the guy, like the boss, and imitate him, and he admired him so much, right? Just as a kid, 8, 9 years old. Well, a couple of days after the shooting, the boss invites him in, and he's sitting down with him, and he says, "So what do you do, kid? Like, what do you? He goes, "Oh, I love the Yankees. I love Mickey Mantle and the Yankees." And he goes, "What does your dad do for a living?" And the kid says, "My dad drives a bus." He goes, "Well, let me ask you something. If your dad couldn't pay the rent, would Mickey Mantle give him his rent money? Would the Yankees give him his rent money? The Yankees don't give a shit about you, right?" The kid is kind of talking like in the first person in the movie, and he says, "From that day on, I never felt the same about the Yankees again." So, and it's true. It's funny, right? These sports teams don't give a fuck about you. They really don't. We were talking the other day, Matt, you and I, we talked like about the NHL All-Star game, right? And how the fans pay for everything, and they talk about we love the fans, and the MVP of the game they give to a player, right? They give a car to the player, right? These guys that are making, $90,000 a week, right? They give them a car. Why don't they pick a fan from the stands, right, and give them a car? Like, they don't give a fuck about you, so why should you give a fuck about them? But anyway.
Well, you've got grown men openly weeping about the Eagles winning a Super Bowl, or guys that follow the Browns and it's their lifeblood. I mean, I guess I don't know. I guess it's just I'm just wired differently, or maybe it's just getting older. But I mean, you see even older fellas that are really, really, really into these teams, and I mean, I guess if you are, that's super cool. But like Brian said, you can't kind of be a fan and be a wagerer at the same time and do both well, because like you over under reactions to your own team, like I find myself, at least especially when I was younger, like overly pessimistic, and maybe that's just being from a Manitoba sports fan, the Jets, the Bombers, something like that. Like there's a lot of disappointment with those teams. Either they don't win or they just pick up and leave town completely for a couple of decades. But it's just like a loss of innocence. I don't know. Maybe it's just getting older. Maybe it's just playing every day for years, where it's just all of a sudden, like I said, all these guys, all these teams, they're all kind of just the same to me. And when we got a ticket on them, we love them. And when we don't, we hate them. The funniest thing is when we bet in-game and you start on one side and you're rooting for them. And then if you flip it or you middle it or whatever, and then you're on the other side, instantly. Like, it's just so funny. And that's just the way it has to be. You can't have any preconceived notions or any biases at all.
I totally understand being a fan. I mean, when I was a kid, I was a big fan of the Maple Leafs. I love the Maple Leafs, and I understand being a fan. The point is, if you're a big fan of a team, you really shouldn't bet on or for or against that team, right? Just ignore that team. But as a big fan, it also presents you with other problems because, for instance, if you're a big fan of the Eagles, you hate the Cowboys, and now you got a bias against the Cowboys. If you're a big fan of, let's say, the Maple Leafs, you hate the Canadians.
Yeah.
You hate the Canadians. If you're a big fan of the Canadians, you hate the Maple Leafs. So, it's not just that one team that it affects. It affects everything. And that's why I say it's really difficult to be both.
Well, we'll see it tonight with the Flames and Oilers. Like, you got Flames fans, and the Oilers were back, and now it's so fun just to I see it with my friends on Twitter and stuff too. Like, they're posting Oiler memes and just Joe. It's just they love it, and I love that they love it. But we've got to be removed from that, and we're looking at that game totally differently from a value perspective or an overreaction perspective. There's just so many different ways to go about it, but a lot of people are wrapped up in the like the Oilers not doing well really makes their day.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just it's something you really have to try and separate. If you're a fan, great. I appreciate that. I understand it, but you can't mix the two. At least I've never seen anyone that's been able to. But I do want to talk about this time of year, Matt, because it's really a great time of year for sports betting. We got the tournament coming up this week. We have NHL playoffs right around the corner, and we have baseball season starting, of course, in just over 2 weeks. And you got NBA playoffs too. So there is a ton of stuff on the go right now. And this is a time of year where tout services come out in droves. And I cannot stress enough, I really have to stress this, to never, ever, ever pay for picks. Okay? You see tout services all over Twitter. You see them making all types of claims. You go to their website, they just make these outrageous claims, right? There's one, that we ran into the other day. The guy he does a lot of talking. How great he is, how great this is, how his record is, and he's looking for $40 for the basketball tournament. $40. This guy that can pick 80% winners is looking for a $40 bill from you. And I want you to think about that for a second, all right? $40, if I'm hitting 80% winners, I don't have to work or write or hustle or do anything for the rest of my life. If I'm hitting 65% winners, I'll say the same thing. You'll never have to work again. So all this bullshit, all these claims are absolutely outrageous, right? And there are so many ploys that these tout services use. And I'm talking about, there's no exceptions, right? Like if you think, oh, well, this guy's pretty good, he's made me money. Trust me when I tell you there are no exceptions to the rule. Not one. There's not one exception to the rule, okay? These guys do not know more than you. They can't handicap better than you. We have proven over and over and over again that nobody can predict the outcome of games, right? You take a basketball game and a guy hits a three at the buzzer to make it or to cover. What if he misses that three, and they don't cover? That's the difference. Nobody can predict that, right? How about a team that's up 4 points and the line is 4.5 and there's 2 seconds left and they inbound it, and in one game they foul the guy and he goes to the line for 2 shots, and in the other game they don't foul him and the clock runs out, right? There's nobody that can predict that. We had a game last week where it was tied with 3 seconds to go. We bet the team straight up to win, right? It was tied 3 seconds to go. Our guy is going to the line for 2 shots with 3 seconds to go. He misses both. The game goes into overtime and we lose. If he hits one of those shots, we win that bet. And there's tout services that are, giving out these games, right? Nobody can predict that stuff. It's impossible, So these guys are great marketers. They're great marketers. They do not know more than you. You have to apply the philosophies that we have presented. And again, can you imagine a guy looking for 40 fucking dollars for the NCAA tournament? Trust me, if he knew anything, he wouldn't need 40 bucks from you. He wouldn't need your credit card number for a lousy 40 fucking dollars. All right? The guy is looking to sell a couple hundred packages for 40 bucks each and then bet the tournament himself and blow out. These guys are degenerate gamblers that don't know a fucking thing about sports betting. They know a lot about heavy pressure marketing. And another thing they'll do, another ploy they'll use, and this is really important. You'll question them, or you'll read what they're offering, and one of the things that will stick out, right? You'll read we've got 70% in the last 3 years monitored, right? And there's these sports monitoring services, okay? There's so many of them. And a sports monitoring service is a service that will monitor touts and post their records so that they're legit, so that people can look them up and say, oh yeah, this guy's legit. He did good, right? And I want to talk about that for a sec, because a sports monitoring service is not going to skew any numbers. They keep legitimate records. But here's the thing, right? If you're a tout, you're a tout service selling picks, okay? What these tout services do is they'll sign up with 4 different sports monitoring services, right? They'll have one, and they'll put in different plays in all of them, right? Or they'll do it every single year, right? And then they'll point out, when they have a good record, they'll point out that year, and people will go there and they'll say, yeah, oh, look, this guy was monitored and went 71-40, But they don't show the other years, and they don't show the other, like, if you're paying for a tout service, you're not going to go onto these sport monitoring services and look up this service, right? They only point you to positive years, If they don't have a good year, they won't even mention it. Only when they have a good run or a good year or a good, right? Like they may go 45-22, over an 8-week period and then cancel. And then they got that 45-22 monitored and visible for everyone to see, right? So pay no attention to sports monitoring services or what they say. It's all bullshit. It's all part of the scam, okay? Sports monitoring services, claims. It's really an unregulated business, and I cannot stress enough, okay? Never, ever to pay for picks, and just don't get conned into, these false claims that these tout services make, because none of them are true. None of them. Okay? So I just want to make that clear before, I know most of the people that listen to this podcast do not pay for picks. They understand the process. But you know what? Sometimes we get new people on. We had a really good response last week to certain things we were doing, and we're getting a few more listeners and a few more readers. So, for anyone that's new or is just starting out, it's very, very enticing. It's very appealing to read what some of these touts are selling. Don't buy into it. Please, please, please. Just believe me when I tell you it's all bullshit. It's really, just a bunch of guys in a boiler room. I mean, with the internet now, they're selling picks online and the claims look good and everything looks good. Believe me, these guys don't know anything. They really don't know. They probably spend about 5 minutes a day. They look at the games quickly and they make their bets. Most of these guys are the biggest degenerate gamblers, sports bettors in the world that have lost a bloody fortune over their lifetime. A bloody fortune. I know. I used to hang out with them in Las Vegas back in the late 70s, early 80s, and nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. They're the biggest degenerate gamblers in the world that have no idea what they're talking about, no idea about strategies, philosophies, value, anything, right? They're playing these ridiculous overpriced favorites, and yeah, they're going to win some games and they're going to go hot and cold like anyone else. But for the most part, you are absolutely going to get buried, not only by the games they give you, but by the price you have to pay them as well. Combine the two, and you have no chance, zero chance of making money. And I absolutely promise you that over the course of a year, a season, whatever, you will get buried by a tout service, by using a tout service. Absolutely buried. So, with that in mind, Matt,
Well, I think it's important to follow up,
on.
just to bring that up. Like, the reason you say it is because we see it. Like, the fellow you're talking about on Twitter, and a well-known fellow. Like, if you follow DFS Fantasy, Picks, Gambling, if you're on gambling Twitter, you know who we're talking about. And it's so funny. The appeal of easy money, to make an easy buck, is so overwhelming. And we see this guy's tens of thousands of followers, right? Thousands and thousands of subscribers to their DFS services. And now we saw when these picks came down, we followed the picks along the way. It was he breaks every rule in the book. He's got emotional investment in some of these teams, right? They want me money here, they want me money there. I've got a future ticket on them. We're rolling with them. They chase bad games. They play first half lines, get buried, come back. Play the second half, Now you're in on 3 bets on a game because they bet the first half, the second half, and then now they've chased it, or they got the full game bet as well. And these guys, they'll go on a little run with him. Maybe he does win. And my favorite thing was he'd have a bad day or, lose 5 bets in a row. And then it would be, well, we're 12-1 since we got rid of all the haters, because people were like, well, your picks are shit. Like, they're no good, blah, blah, blah. And he block. And then you see he goes on a little run. All these guys are, maybe catching on at this play or that play. Maybe they do make a little money, and then they can't wait to buy the services. And they're proud to post the PayPal slips that show that they spent $189 or $400 or whatever it is on more tout plays, whether they be DFS or straight up picks. And so I didn't think it was a real shock that after a real couple of bad days of, like we said, playing these overvalued teams, these ranked teams versus unranked opponents, these conference tournament games where we're not sure who really is in, who's really out, and who really cares. And 3 days before the tournament comes up, and boom, we're behind a paywall. Not a shock, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. And what he'll do is he'll post free plays for a few days, right? And as soon as he goes 4-0, he may go 1-9, and then he'll win 3 games in a row. And after winning 3 games in a row, he'll go, no more free plays. You want these plays, you got to pay, right? Stuff like that. So it's just very sleazy. And you got to avoid them. You really do.
And there's just hundreds of guys, though, bragging about buying this stuff. So just to be like, if you're like, well, I'd never do that, who would do that? Tons of people are fucking doing that. And so I think that's why, it's so hard to break through that wall, Brian. It's so hard to change how you think, but it really is a grind. Like, don't talk to me about, how much money we're going to have made at the end of, say, this NCAA tournament. It goes further than that. It's about the month, the year, 2 years from now, your record over the last 15 years, how many positive years again and again, all document, all there for everyone to kind of see. And it's so hard to talk people out of just trying to give away their money so they can try to make easy money. There's no easy money, I guess, and cliches are old and true, but there's just no easy bucks, man.
Yeah, and we've proven it so many times how nobody can predict the outcome of games. Nobody. And you have to play value. And that is what we do. These tout services don't even consider it. They won't even consider, they actually think or try and convince you that they can predict the outcome, right? Which it's just crazy. So, we're going to stick to what we're doing. If we can change one mind or 2 minds, over the course of, or a few minds, or spread the word and get it out there, it will be a better industry over the long haul.
Before I cut you off there, you're talking about sort of the good response we've had the last couple of weeks to what we've been doing. One of the big things, obviously, has been those moneyline parlays that we've had a lot of fun with. Those tutorials, I've kind of got them from where they used to be, going to put them up on the YouTube page, but you want to record a couple new ones as well, which is great. But just a good response to those. We've seen people posting their tickets, some folks having success with that. And you wanted to bring a point up about how, when we get to that last game, we like to pick a late game or something down the line. Like, I know we were making tickets the other day, like moving games on to Thursday and Friday for the NCAAs, right? Hit a couple of hockey games maybe last night, and then you got tickets working on to those games. And when we get to those games, you have so many options when you get to that last game, in-game, to really hedge and make a ton of money, really.
Okay, so, Matt, in regards to hedging 3-game parlays, or even a 2-game parlay, so for instance, if you've won the first 2 games of a 3-game parlay, or the first game of a 2-game parlay, or you have 1 game left on whatever the number of whatever the parlay is, 3 games, 4 games, you're in a great situation to hedge the bet. And there are a lot of options to hedging, right? And the first one that I think you should consider is buying out of your liability, which is a great option. In other words, if you got, let's say, $40 invested in this parlay, you buy back the other team so that you are free rolling on the bet, right? You have no loss with a chance to win a lot of money, right? Especially if you got like a 4-game parlay working or a 3-game money line parlay working, where you stand to cash out 12 or 13 or 14 to 1, right? Buying out of your liability is smart. You want to free roll as much as you can and whenever you can. Another option is to buy back the other side, right? So no matter what happens, you're going to make, half of what the parlay pays. If it's paying 6 to 1, you're going to make 3 to 1. If it's paying 14 to 1, you're going to make 7 to 1, which isn't a bad option either. But here's the thing about doing that. You take away a lot of the value of that original parlay, right? Even though you guarantee yourself making money, you take away a lot of the value. Instead of getting 14 to 1, which was the true value on a money line parlay, now you're only getting 7 to 1, right? Which is okay. There's nothing wrong with 7 to 1. But if you're going to do that, you have to do it all the time. You can't pick and choose, right? If you're in a position to cash a 3-game parlay or a 4-game parlay, whatever, you can't pick and choose whether you're going to hedge. You have to hedge all the time or none of the time, right? At the end of the day, water finds its level. You'll probably do just as well always hedging or never hedging. So, that's up to you. The other option is in-game, which is a great, 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 great option, okay? Because if you're taking back a price of 6 to 1 or better or 8 to 1, whatever it is, and you have in-game, right? Now you have a chance to middle, because let's say you're taking back 4.5 in a game, and now your team goes up by 15 or 16 or whatever it is. They go up by a significant margin. The in-game spread adjusts, right? So if you're taking back 4.5 on your parlay as the third leg of your parlay, and now your team is up by 15 or 16, the in-game point spread is going to be 14 or 15 or 13. Well, now you can buy back the other side, right? And now you got a big middle working, and you can hit both bets, right? When you're hedging before the game starts, you can't win both bets. If you're hedging in-game, you can win both bets. So I understand that some people don't have the luxury of betting in-game, but if you do have that luxury, I highly recommend doing that in-game. Of course, it may not work out. Your team can fall behind and be behind the entire game. But more games than not, you're going to get a chance to go for a middle, even if it's a 3 or 4 point middle, right? You can free roll for that half your value, right? So if, for instance, you're getting back 10 to 1 and you want to hedge, you make it now a 5 to 1 either way, right? Even if it's a 3 point middle, at least you have that chance to cash both bets. So in-game is the best way to hedge. If you have a large payout coming to you, I strongly recommend hedging, at least some of it, so that you're free roll. So for instance, if you're taking back, 15 or 20 to 1 on a parlay, right? Take some profit, like buy back 3 to 1, so you're still got a 14 or 11 to 1 parlay working, and you're showing a nice 3 to 1 profit anyway, no matter what. I would not hedge the entire thing or half the thing. I prefer in-game with a chance to cash everything. So I would consider all of that. There's nothing wrong with hedging. The one mistake that I think people make is trying to outguess. I like a game this way, or I like this game a lot. It doesn't matter what you like. You either got to do it, just be consistent with what you're doing. Do it the same way all the time. I think hedging is good. I do it myself. I like to free roll whenever I can, and I would suggest at the very least you free roll.
You're going to have some heartbreakers too. I mean, I showed you some of those tickets we had on the weekend, about a dozen of them. And with paying about $3 tickets, I were paying over $100 basically is what I had going on there. And there's about 12 or 13 of them. And I think the hedge, if I was just to cash out everything and hedge, it was about $450 or so. But the reality was I only needed 3 of those tickets to hit that, you really limit yourself. And, I ended up only hitting 2 tickets, but there are 2 other ones that missed by a point. And even if just 4 to 12 hit, that would have been more than my hedging price. And just to Brian's point in game, like playing NHL the other night, we were talking and, you got to be on the ball. There's 4 1-goal games, so I hit them all. Within 5 minutes, Brian, 10 minutes, they're all tied up, right? So we instantly free roll, and guess what? 0-4, right? And then on that same night, I got 2 middles working, both 4-point middles in the NBA. I mean, the NBA, you got to get into a free roll or a middle as soon as you can, because we've seen some of those games get out of hand sometimes. You just never know where it's going to go. And it turns out both teams hung around, took an inflated number to begin with. When it came back the other way, obviously bought into that. Both teams missed garbage baskets at the end of the game that would have had both of those middles hit. So at the end of the day, though, just playing the middle ended up saving 2 bets.
Exactly, and you're free rolling, right? So that's really the whole key,
And then you're gonna get a game like Cincy and Houston, where I had 3 or 4 middles working that game, plus working the money line, and everything hits. And so it works both ways, right? Like you're gonna have 12 bad beats and 1 really good one, and it was still all profitable. There's gonna be a week where there's gonna be 12 good games and 1 bad beat, and then you're really rolling in it. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So baseball is around the corner. And we have a great baseball parlay system. It's a little bit different than basketball or hockey, because in basketball, like, we like to buy or sell points in these parlays, right? We like to bet the alternative point spread. So, for instance, if a team is a 3-point favorite, we like to take the underdog and lay 3 or 3.5 points and take a plus of 240 or something like that, just in parlays, right? You take 3 of those games, right? Or just key one of them, so let's say, St. Bonaventure and UCLA, right? UCLA is, I forget who's favorite, but you take the dog plus 3.5 as opposed to 3, which is a great bet, right? It's what I call a crossover bet. It takes a small underdog that obviously can win, right? If they're a 2 or 3 point underdog, it's 1 possession, and you put them into a 1 possession favored. It's a crossover, right? Instead of being a 2.5 or 3 point favorite or underdog, you make them a 2 or 2.5 or 3 point favorite, right? They go from a 1 possession underdog to a 1 possession favorite. It's a crossover, but it's a very small number, if they're going to win, And now all of a sudden, instead of minus 110, you're plus 220 on that alternative point spread, right? And you key that team onto other teams, and now you're looking at, if that one team wins, you're looking at 25 and 30 to 1 parlays, right? So it's great. But for baseball, we like to just take the normal underdog, a team that's taken back 120, and key that one team, right, with another underdog. And then we use these a bunch of add-ons, right? So we might take, let's say, Colorado plus 120 onto the Blue Jays plus 110, and then that's a wheel. That's like what I call a 2-horse wheel, right? If those 2 teams win, I add on, I make, let's say, 6 parlays, with Colorado and Toronto on every single ticket, and then I'll throw in add-ons. I'll take underdogs minus 1.5 plus 220 plus 230. Doesn't really matter what teams you take. I like to take high scoring parks, like whoever the dog is in Cincinnati, or whoever the dog is in Philadelphia, or whoever the dog is in
Arizona, Coors, any of those, exactly. Baltimore, anywhere. Baltimore, yeah. All those places.
All those places. You take the dog minus 1.5, and now you got 5 or 6 parlays, that are paying anywhere from, 11 to 1 to 15 or 20 to 1, right? On a 3-team parlay, and they're true odds. So that's what my parlay tutorial is all about on baseball. You can ask me for the link to that, and I'll gladly send it to you. And one other thing I want to cover just before we get out of here, Matt, and we've covered this before, but I'm going to cover it again just for a second. And that's fluctuations in bets, right? And you see touts doing this too, right? Which is, it just shows you how foolish they can be. Anyway, this is what people do. A lot of people do this. They'll make 4 bets, and 2 bets will be for 2 units, one bet will be for 1 unit and another bet will be for half a unit. Or they'll make 3 at 2 units and 1 at 1 unit. Or they're just different bets, right? They got 3 games, they bet 1 for 2 units and the other 2 for 1 unit each, right? It's a big mistake to do that, all right? If you like a game less, just think about this for a sec. If you like a game less, then, you got a 2 unit bet and a 1 unit bet. If you like a game less, why are you betting it? Why are you betting it if you like it less? If you don't like it as a 2 unit bet, it's the same as the other one, why are you betting it just for action? Are you betting it because you like it a little? If you like it a little, don't bet it. Love the game and bet it for the exact same amount every single time. What happens is you bet 1 for 2 unit and 1 for 1 unit. What happens? You go 1 and 1 and you win the 1 unit bet and lose the 2 unit bet, right? And it happens all the time, So don't fluctuate your bets on the same day, If you want to bet all for 1 unit one day and all for 2 units the next day, fine. But always make the same amount, the same bet on that day. Don't categorize your wagers as, best bets, second best bets. I never post a game or bet a game, that I'll put leans on my website from time to time. But I will never, ever bet a game less than, if I don't like it as much as the best bet, then don't bet the game. Do you need the action that badly? If you don't love it, don't bet it. All right? If you love one game and don't love 2 others, don't go 2 unit, 1 unit, 1 unit. Go 2 unit and don't bet the other games, right? Or go 1 unit on each. So never fluctuate your bets. It's a bad habit to get into. It's a bad habit to have, and it's a losing habit. All right, so if you do that, if you find yourself doing that from time to time, remove it from your repertoire and stick to playing the same amount on every single game. And with that, Matt, we will get out of here. Look for our plays on the website for the NCAA tournament, and I will have a link to a couple of my brackets.
Fantastic, Brian. That's great advice. Give Brian a follow on Twitter at SportsWagers3. Of course, the show at SportsWagersPod. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/SportsWagers. YouTube. I've made our YouTube lives much easier, Brian. Go to tinyurl.com/SportsWagers. It'll take you right to the YouTube page. Like Brian said, we dug up that older Parlay tutorial. I will get that posted up there by the time you are listening to this, and then we'll get something maybe fresh up before the baseball season, Brian. We'll see what you think about that. And, of course, Instagram, SportsWagers.ca, and the website. All those great free daily plays. I mean, that's the bread and butter, Brian, the write-ups. SportsWagers.ca. For Brian Sherwood-Steinberg, I'm Matthew Finney. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the SportsWagers.ca podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe. For free daily picks, visit SportsWagers.ca.